this lesson, I'm going to teach you a bunch of patterns. We're basically going to break down the kind of thing I played in the intro using patterns that you can build up almost like Lego to create incredible bass lines. So it's all based around an E, and that's the red blob here. We'll start with this very simple pattern here. Now this all works over minor chords, so an E minor chord in this case, although you can move all of these shapes around. I'll quickly explain what we have here. We've got E on the 7th fret, A string. That's called the root note. 2 notes or 2 frets lower. That's the D, and it's the flat 7, and you probably should know both those things. The name of the note and the interval that it is, So root, flat 7. And this note down here on the same fret as the E, that's the B on the E string. 7th fret, and that's the 5th. But, just learn the pattern for now. We've got an E here if you're on the A string. You drop down to the same fret on the lower string, lower pitched string. And then we have a note 2 frets lower than the root. That E is very important to remember. There is no tab in this lesson. I'm going to be making things up, and I encourage you to do the same. I will give you the drum beat though. It's a half time sort of thing. Very slow. So you'd have to imagine an E minor chord going underneath. With the magic of post-production, I'll add one in now actually. Listen. You can play anything, it's going to sound good, okay, using these patterns. Let's move on to the next one. Now we have an E, root again. We have a flat 3rd now, which is the G. And then we have a perfect 4th, just a 4th, that's the A. You definitely would have heard these notes before in loads and loads of bass lines. The beginning of Smoke on the Water, which isn't played by the bass. Anyway, that is that sound. The first pattern. So we mix them up. That's the E. That's really important in this example. So but we need more notes to flesh things out. That's where this lesson comes in. So all of these notes work. Next pattern uses basically both those patterns mashed together, but thinking about it like this now. Really good for fills. It's just a fragment of a minor pentatonic scale. So all of those notes work. They all work. Again, to emphasize the point, it's good to know the names of the notes and the intervals. So A, B, D, E, G, A. And you've got root, flat 3rd, 4th, flat 7. The flat 7 is always 2 frets lower than your root. Then you have the 4th again, but down the octave. It's the A and the B, okay? But for now, if that's all a bit too much, just learn the pattern and just play it around. It sounds good. The E is your target, because that's our root here. Then we have this. We have a root, the E, 2 frets, and onto the D string we have the B, that's the 5th. And then 2 frets, and the next string, the G, that's the F sharp. That's the 9th. Intervals are the distances between notes. And if you have a scale like this, which is sort of where all of this comes from in the first place, natural minor. You're just counting up the notes of the scale starting on 1, and wherever you end up is the interval. So 9, you go to the 9th note, which is the first one beyond the octave. It's the second up the octave. And root 5, 9 on bass just sounds so good. You can slide from the octave to the 9th. You're just learning that pattern and it just works so well all the time. I'm going to add a note. That was pattern 1. This is not a technique lesson, but obviously there's a shift, or a shift and a stretch going on there. There was a shift. You know, I'm not going to break that down so much in this lesson, that's kind of up to you. But needless to say, yeah, you absolutely have to have your technique and your coordination down in order to really, really improvise well with these patterns, because you've got to get there, don't you? And also have a basic sense of timing. It's quite slow. 16th notes are at this sort of tempo, like quite slow. You can use this in any style. I'm just sticking to this for now. So that second pattern I went into just added the G. That's the flat third up the octave. Running up our scale, we get to a 10th. So a flat third up the octave is a flat 10th. And, you know, whenever I'm making up a bass line or jamming, improvising, I'm using these patterns. Although I will just take this opportunity to say, this is like building blocks and patterns, but as soon as you can, break out of the patterns and use your ear. You know, I'm very much more guided by the ear these days. I did learn patterns to start with, and I loved the fact that I can actually see where the notes are and I know what it's going to sound like. So you can come up with bass lines really easily with that. But also another great superpower with this, by the way, is if you listen to a bass line that you really, really love, if you work on this enough, you'll know instantly what pattern is being used and how to play it, because it's all sounds. So, you know, you can play this any way you like, but maybe go first finger, with a little jump to the 5th, the B. Then you've got fingers 3 and 4 to play the F sharp and the G. I'm resting on the A string, backing up my thumb to mute the E, and everything's clean. So just make stuff up. I know if that's something you're not, you know, very experienced at, you just have to dive into it. And, you know I'm just going, do this, and isn't it that easy? I'm not suggesting it's easy, but just practice. Next pattern, we have an E, G, and a D. If you play those together, you outline an E minor 7 chord. Which you can play together, well, that turns it into a chord, or separate for more traditional bass lines. And that's just combining that pattern with pattern 1, if you like, and the next one. Now, it's not the case that you're like, okay, I must go from that pattern to this pattern to that pattern. That's too like thinking in the box. That's a pitfall of learning patterns, is that you do just play in that sort of quite static, not flowing way, which is why I warned you before, to try not to do that. You know, learn the patterns, then unlearn them. You know, if I'm going, I'm not thinking individual patterns. I'm just thinking one whole thing, guided by my ear, whatever. But I do think it's a good thing to split them up. So there you have the E minor 7 chord, and just take it and just play some individual notes. With the drum beat, you might do something like this. I remember a Jaco Pastorius bass line, slowed down, that went like this. And that's the thing. If you were to hear that, after having learned this really, really well, you'll connect the dots, you'll connect the notes and the sounds, and your ear will get better too. So patterns is not just what you can play on the bass, it's how to improve your ear. Only a couple more, although there are loads more. I'll just keep it fairly simple for this lesson. It's this one. If you isolate the G, B and F sharp within that shape, you have a G major 7 chord. That's a chord that fits in to this key. So E minor 7, G major 7. You can play it as chords just to have some fun with it, or as a bass line thing. You can go. You will notice as well the E, F sharp, G. Well, that's the end bit of that shape we played. So it's all connected, it's all linked up. But I think it's quite nice to learn that isolated shape. So you've got the G, the F sharp. If we're thinking of the G as the root note, which was sort of not, but think of it like that now. Then the F sharp is the major 7th. It's quite nice to hammer on from the major 7th to the G. Very melodic. You know, all of those notes connected sounds really good. The last shape is a B minor 7 chord. You might recognize it. The shape is the same as the first one. Root, flat third, flat 7. If you take that shape and apply it to the 14th fret of the A string, you have a B minor 7. If you look at the intervals though, the B is actually the 5th away from E, that's our root. The D is the flat 7, and the A is the perfect 4th. So like something like this would work. All of those chords fit together. So there are other patterns, you know, root 5 octave is extremely simple. Actually, there was one I missed. I meant to do this earlier. I'll show you it now. It actually contains those notes and adds a D, which is a flat 7. I have loads of pattern lessons, by the way. I'll have a link below to the others. That is a pattern I will teach in every single minor pattern lesson I do, because I reckon that might be the most common bass pattern. It's just brilliant. Root, 5, octave, they're such solid notes. And the flat 7 is in there. Notice that's also in some of the other shapes. So you could connect these up. Also, see how it unlocks the fretboard. So I'm on fret 5 there, and that one up all the way up there was fret 14. So that's a lot of bass that you're playing with there. And then, of course, you can move this around, and you can move it to different keys as well. Let me know if you want to follow up to this lesson. I have an idea maybe to do the same treatment on a on a major chord. And then everything I was demoing today is just on one root, isn't it? But I could do a chord progression and show you patterns over that as well. If you have any questions, as ever, do leave them below. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff really helps me to create free lessons, which I do every week. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next lesson.